So a little over a week ago, I went down to Alabama to shoot the Chaos Concepts team sniper match at Steel City Precision. This was the first sniper match that I competed in where I was scored against all the other competitors. The Tactical Game Sniper Challenge, as fun and educational as that was, did not give me the full experience of actually competing in a sniper match, as I was proofing stages with Nick. We were not actually scored, and we missed 2 or 3 stages on moving targets and stuff like that, just because we were running out of time. So this is effectively my first sniper match, and I learned all kinds of things, taking out my various equipment. And the main purpose for going down there were really 2 purposes. One was to test 4 different products that we're working on here at T.REX Arms. But the second purpose, and the main purpose, is to check if my training that I'm doing on my range is actually working. That is the reason that you, or most regular folks, should be attending matches. Unless you're someone that wants to win trophies and get to the top and devote a lot of energy to shooting matches, the way people should view matches is a way to benchmark how your live fire is going. Like, is it actually working? Is it paying off? And what isn't working, you go back and start to fix and improve. This is a mentality shift that I had regarding dry fire when I was watching one of Ben Stager's videos, where he said that live fire on the range is actually just a check to see if your dry fire is working. And that was kind of a new perspective for me regarding dry fire and live fire. I've had the perspective that matches should be a way to assess your live fire training, and that's effectively what I went down to do. So what I'd like to do in this video is give a little bit of an AAR of this particular match and what I've learned. It should be insightful to some of you who are interested in pursuing matches like this. But I also want to sort of demonstrate how someone should sort of assess their performance from a match like this. Because too many people, I believe, go to shoot a match, they have fun, they place, they pat themselves on the back, and they don't actually get the full benefit or the full return on investment of using that match as an assessment and actually being critical of what they did poorly. So this is also a public record for what I didn't do and what I'm going to be fixing in my training. And in a couple years, if I am continuing to shoot sniper matches, I'll be able to come back to this and see where I was at in 2025 and see how I've improved. Before we get into it, I want to give special thanks to Roy for teaming up as my partner. I messaged him last minute. We've never met. We've talked on Instagram. He's in the military, he's active. He's shot a lot of sniper matches, USASOC, Mammoth, like a bunch of different places. And I selected him for a couple of reasons. One, I figured we would get along because we have some shared mutual connections. And then 2, he has a lot of experience shooting these kinds of matches that I wanted to learn from. Thankfully, he said yes, he could make the time on such short notice. So he drove out. We met for the first time the night before the match at the Airbnb. We did a little communications drill with Legos that he brought in, which was super fun. And we just got to know each other a little bit better, kind of, communicate a little bit. He's homeschooled as well. So we got along quite well, and I think some of that paid off in the match, but there was also a lot of communication failures from us just not working together, and we'll get into that. The second and third person I want to give credit and thanks to are Brian Morgan and we'll just say Matt. 2 individuals who've taken a lot of time out of their schedule to teach me long range and snipery stuff over the last couple of years. And if it were not for them, I would not have shot this match. I would not know what I know about this sort of thing right now, which is still not a lot, but it's a lot more than I knew before. And I would not have placed with my teammate as high as we did if these 2 individuals did not take me under their wing and teach me this stuff, and I really appreciate their time in doing that. So big thanks to Brian. Some of you guys know who Brian Morgan is up at Hat Creek, and also to Matt. Someday I could probably say who it is, but for now we'll just leave it at Matt. It'll be fun. So first off, what was the Chaos Concept sniper match? And what is a sniper match? So as I was setting up all my equipment and posting some photos online on Instagram, there were some people saying like, oh, why do you need all that equipment? Like, what are you even doing? It was mainly like PRS shooters asking that. I saw a couple. And it is a lot of equipment to shoot a match like this, and there's not a lot of matches like this. That's one thing that's kind of sad, is the sniper community, not so much the long range like PRS and NRL and ELR community, but the sniper community itself of these team military style matches is a tiny community. It's probably only a few hundred people. You go to matches and you see a lot of the same people. I saw some of the same people that I saw at the Tactical Games event. I talked to some of the guys down there, and they said, yeah, we all just see each other. We all know each other. We see each other every match. because there's not a lot of these events and there's not a lot of people doing it. I hope in the future that these types of matches will grow in popularity, because I believe this format of match is, and this format of equipment and application of skill and equipment and gear is much more applicable to civilians and citizens and Minutemen than your high-speed Navy SEAL CQB that so many people want to do because it's cool and it's fun. I think this stuff is a lot more applicable. You can actually do a lot with just 2 people without a ton of logistics. And it is a little expensive to get into, but so are taking CQB classes and traveling and buying crazy Gucci 416 guns and stuff like that. So I'm hoping the matches will grow in popularity. That's one reason I'm trying to document them. If you guys are interested, you can look around. And T.REX Arms may, in the future, try to put on some of these matches just to add to their number, so there's more opportunities for you guys to go somewhere, range, find, and engage targets, or find, range, and engage targets, and take your equipment out and actually see what it's doing. So let's talk about the match format. So the difference between, from what I can tell and what I have learned, between a sniper match and a PRS match, or ELR, or even NRL Hunter to some extent, is typically the competitors are supposed to carry all of their equipment for that day or days. In this case, it was just for that one day we had to carry everything. Your ruck time between stages may be timed. There's a few matches like this. Mammoth does some of that. This match did it, but a little differently. So there's a physical component involved, and normally a pistol is required. Some matches, very few matches do night stuff because not everyone has clip-ons and inods and thermals and crazy stuff. So unless it's a military-specific match like USASOC where teams have that access to that, a lot of these matches are not requiring night stuff because civilian competitors generally don't have the same equipment. I can't get an inod, and if I could, it'd probably be $90,000. So I'm completely outclassed by mil teams who are issued those. So for the most part, day matches only. You carry a pistol. You have a bunch of magazines for it. You have your primary shooter will shoot a bolt gun in a Magnum or smaller caliber, a 6.5 Creedmoor, something like that. And then your secondary shooter will shoot a gas gun, typically of some sort, 5.56, 6-arc. There were a lot of 6-arcs, it looked like, from the match I was just at, which is kind of unfair compared to a 5.56 gun like my partner had, as far as wind and distances and stuff. And but in the match we just shot, the secondary could also shoot a 6.5. So there were some teams both were shooting 6.5, so they could go off of the same dope, which is pretty fun. But this match, I believe the requirement was primary has to be a bolt gun, secondary has to be a gas gun, and calibers were kind of like up to you. So there were some people definitely gaming it with different cartridges, and I don't blame them. Like when there's a lot of wind, or you have to shoot your secondary gun at the same distance as the primary at 1,000 meters, yeah, that can make a pretty big difference. On the ELR stage, he had to take his 5.56 out to 1,089, and I think he got 1 hit. And there was a ton of wind. I only got 2 hits with my gun. So more on that later. For this particular match, the interesting component that I've never had before and is rare, the ruck time was timed, and the stage that you rolled into, there was no pause for, taking off your kit, waiting for the squad to be done shooting. You roll straight into that stage, and everything is raw time from your launch time, which our first one was 10:40 a.m., to when we're finished. So the fun component that I've never had before is if a team is rolling up behind you, they don't wait for you to be done. They bump you, and they yell at you, as some teams did. And you have to get out of the way, and any targets you leave are penalties. So there was a stress component that was very different than a shot timer of, hey, there's a team that's starting 10 minutes behind us, but if we spend 8 minutes on this stage and they're, jogging the entire time, they may bump us, and then we walk to the next stage, and they may be right on our heels right again. So we kind of gamed some stuff. We said, hey, we're going to take 5 minutes per stage to shoot, which is pretty common for a match like this, 3 to 5 minutes. But if we're at 5, we probably just need to move. Like if we have 2 or 3 targets left, we just need to move, because that's better than getting bumped and then immediately getting bumped at the next stage. There were a couple stages, I think we went into 6 or even 7 minutes, and then we just had to make up time on the movement. But what this did was we changed our equipment a little bit based on that, or at least I did, going, hey, I'm not going to bag my rifle because speed is very important. I'm going to carry it on a sling because we're just rolling into positions and having to shoot right away. So we ran a pretty light loadout, which you can learn more about on the Armory channel for those of you gear nerds who are interested in what kind of gear is expected or required or would be good for a match like this. But that's kind of the format for this match. We had a launch time. It was about 2 hours, I think, for the entire duration. Penalties for targets we leave of 60 or two, I think it was 2 minutes. I thought it was 60 seconds. I think it's 2 minutes per target. And so you're having to strategize the entire way where you want to make up time and where you may lose time. We got bumped twice on the first day. The bumps were not too bad though. Like we had already gotten some points. We were only down a few. We weren't getting bumped like immediately upon arriving into a stage. The second day we kept up our pace. Nobody bumped us, and we actually bumped other teams twice. I think one team we were nice. We kind of hung out, loaded, let them crack off a couple more shots, and then we were like, all right, we're here. Like, go. We're ready to shoot now. So it was a fun time. But let's talk about the filming for this match. So I took an Insta360, hoping I could record every stage for my own assessment of what's going on and to show you guys what it looks like. Unfortunately, the Insta360 is a camera that goes in your hat that's tiny. It requires the battery component to like keep it powered throughout the day. And I had too much going on to worry about that I was not doing the whole like pull it out of my hat every stage, charge it. So we only got a little bit of footage on each day. And the footage we got, I think, were the worst stages, which is pretty funny, which is also good though for just looking back at it. So that was fun. So not a lot of footage from the match, but that wasn't the goal of going out there. I didn't take a camera team. Frankly, I didn't want to. I don't really like doing that at matches. I'm there to focus on the match. I'm not there to film a video. If we're gonna film a video, we'll do it at my range or we'll make it a separate trip. I don't wanna be that guy who runs around with a camera team every match I go to, even though some people seem to think that's what I do. I'm not interested in doing that. So let's start with the things that did not go so well that I need to work on, which some of these things are going to be very difficult to work on at my range on my own. Some of them are things I'm gonna have to just go and experience at other matches and just gain, that familiarization for how these matches work. Because the first thing that tripped me up, especially for like the first 3 or 4 stages, was not adapting to the conditions and rules of that stage. Now, here's a big difference between, from what I've seen so far, in these types of matches compared to something like USPSA. In USPSA, there are very few rules or variables that are going to change how you shoot the stage. You have a start position, you have a load protocol, like either loaded, unloaded, something like that, and then you have like 2 or 3 types of targets, and you're going to run around and shoot them as fast as you can in between like 8 seconds and 20 seconds. There's not a lot of weird rule changes about like, oh, well now we're shooting, you can't shoot these targets until you shoot this target, it activates this. There's not a whole lot of weird rules. It's very straightforward. Every stage is kind of the same. That's where people get really sweaty, at where they're finding performance and how they're getting an edge on other competitors. But in a match like this, we had stages where the rules completely changed, like upside down for what we're doing and how we're doing it. On the last stage, we had these 2 little blinds that both of us got into, and they said, you're not allowed to communicate with your partner, and they don't tell us what targets to shoot. We had a piece of paper inside, and it said, your partner's targets are this color. That's all it said. And then I'm sitting there like, well, this is new. I've never done this before. I have no rules about where I'm shooting. I mean, I can tell like the blind's facing this way. I'm not allowed to talk to him. I can't show him the paper because I thought, well, I'll just walk out of the blind because they didn't say I can't do that. Hold it up. They said, you can't show him the paper. So I sat there for a minute thinking about it because that's a completely new, like a new mechanic in a video game. And then I finally looked down range and I saw his targets that had a blue head and a gray body. And then I saw next to them targets that were the same but with an orange head. And then I was like, you know what? I bet the orange ones are mine because that's kind of like computer game, video game logic. He's got the blue ones. That's what my paper says. I bet his says I have the orange ones. So I set up my tripod, got on the gun, and I shot an orange one, heard my RO call impact, and I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm just shooting the orange ones. But it took me a couple minutes to get oriented, or probably not 2 minutes. It was probably like 70 seconds before I started getting on the gun and actually seeing what's going on. So that was very new for me, rolling into stages with completely new conditions and rules that you can't really anticipate ahead of time, especially when it says ROs will tell you what to do and they give you no instruction. So 20 minutes before our step off time, so the first day we had a 10 minute and 40 second, 10 a.m., 10:40. Jeez. step-off time, they told us 20 minutes before that, walk up and we'll give you the shooting brief for the day. So we're prepping all of our kit, still not knowing what the stage brief is. Some matches will give you the brief the day before, is what I've been told. And then you go back to your hotel or Airbnb and you kind of like think about it and you get prepared. Well, this match, we didn't have that. We had 20 minutes before we had to leave. So like 25 minutes before the first stage, something like that. So the printout looks something like this. This is a screenshot, or I took a photo and printed it off. And they give you some rules. So for the first stage that we shot, it says both shooters hit all your pistol targets with 1 impact each. They don't say how many. They don't say how far they're going to be. There could be 10, there could be 5. It's nothing. Just shoot them all once. Move to identify shooting positions. Gas gun, so secondary shooter, engages 4 head targets with 2 impacts each. Now that one kind of, for the first few stages, that was rough for me because I forgot about the 2 impacts part. I do a lot of 1 impact stuff. And then I was having to go back and shoot everything again, although I knew where it was, so that was kind of fine. That kind of tripped me up. Bolt gun engages 4 coyotes with 2 impacts each. This is a stage where that happened. I looked out trying to find the coyotes. They were at like 700 meters. Started getting hits. I found 2 of them. I wasn't able to find the others. And then I realized, oh, 2 each. And then I went back and shot both of those. So again, without paying attention to the specific rules and conditions of that stage. And the issue that I had is on my cheat sheet that I drew up in that 20 minutes that we were preparing, I did not write my conditions or my rules for the stage. Roy had the actual brief on his person. I did not, so I was having to ask him what the rules were, and that's a waste of time because he's trying to shoot. So I corrected this on the second day, writing out like my specific rules for myself. He had his for himself, and we were able to work pretty well. Optimally, I would have his as well, but for this, I was just trying to dial in like my stuff because I was already like pretty messed up. So that was a big one. The thing about this though is, and from talking to different guys, as you shoot more matches and as you become familiar with these different game mechanics, because that's effectively what these are, just like in a puzzle video game, as soon as you see the mechanic in person, as soon as you understand it, if you see it again, like you already know what to do. If I go and shoot a lot of these matches, I probably won't see new stuff that often. I'll be like, oh, this is like that stage I shot a year ago. I know kind of what's going on because there's a lot of repeats of these different sort of game mechanics. But being a new person to this, a lot of this is brand new to me. Like almost probably 80% of this match was stuff I've never done or seen before. Which brings me to the next point, which was I didn't understand target nomenclature for this particular shooting sport. So where I got hung up on one stage, and it's mostly my fault, but also I don't know what they look like. They said head and shoulders target. I got up to my position. I start looking. I thought it was head targets. Like that's kind of what I was looking for. I saw no head targets. I thought I heard the RO saying head targets as well. I finally was like, well, I'm pretty sure it's this guy. I'm just going to shoot it. He called impact, and I was like, okay, good. That's the target. It's actually like a whole third of the torso and the head, and then I just started working through those. And I think I hit on that one all of them. I think I missed one at the end. I couldn't find it. So that hung me up on a few stages where they had very specific target names, and that was something Roy didn't realize. He mentioned later, he kind of took it for granted that I would know what all these targets are called in this shooting kind of sport. And I was like, no, some of these I don't even know. I've never shot before, never shot a coyote target, although I know what it looks like. It's a coyote, you know. I've shot coyotes in real life, so like I know what it looks like. But he was like, okay, that's interesting. Like that's a learning point. Like I'll have to teach people that if they don't know. So if you're going to a sniper match and you have not shot a bunch of different targets, you may want to go online and try to understand like what an E-silhouette looks like a military specific target, certain hunting targets, NRL type targets, and just kind of get a visual picture of what they look like. And they may change some of the names for a match like this. It's very possible. But that was a pretty big one for me that hung me up. The biggest problem for me, and this is hard to train, there are some techniques that I've been told about, is target detection. So what makes this match, the thing that makes this match the most like a sniper match, and for those of you who do this, you can correct me, but this is just my understanding right now, is the find, range, and engage component. So you don't know where the targets are. You don't know the distances. You have to get up there and find all of them. Now, this is a fun training point I want to make. In so many of our videos, when I'm on the flat range shooting close drills with pistols and carbines, we've all seen the comments from people saying, oh, well, it's easy because you know where all the targets are. Well, that's not true. Like there's a lot going on in order to shoot all those targets. But the funny thing is, even if you set up a blind stage in that format, there's no training value, in my opinion. Me coming around a hard corner, like with one of our boxes, and seeing a USPSA target, I'm not going to magically get better at coming around the corner and seeing a USPSA target. There's zero skill benefit or increase in me doing 50 reps of not knowing there's a target there, and then a USPSA target all magically like, oh, it's there, and then I come up and shoot it. There's no training benefit in that. You're not going to get better over time doing that. For this, though, when a target is hidden in the shrubbery and it's 800 meters away, and I'm trying to, maybe I'm getting talked on by my partner and he's trying to tell me where it is, different story. A blind stage in this format has incredible training value. A blind stage from 7 meters with a handgun, not the same. So this format, blind stages are super cool. I really like them. On a flat range, they're kind of retarded and they're stupid, in my opinion. There's no training benefit. Do it a couple times, see what it's like, but after that, you'll get no benefit. Diminishing returns hits you immediately. Another issue that we had, so target detection, before I move on, that was my biggest issue, just not having experience scanning different sectors or even understanding shooting lanes. They had this one course of fire where they actually had pool noodles signifying a square, if you could see all 4 of them, which I couldn't because there were trees in the way. And you could, with your naked eye, just looking out going, it's this box. Like, they're all in this area. I could only see 2 of the noodles, like the close one and the far one in this corner, and I was just trying to shoot in this whole area. And Roy, from his position further down on the little tree stand little thing, he could see all 4. So he could see the box and he understood that's what was going on. But I could not see that. So target detection, definitely the biggest one. There were targets we couldn't find. We had to move on and we lost a lot of points. And that's ultimately what dropped us. A lot of places was just moving on, having not found targets. Every target we found, we ultimately hit, except for the ELR stage, different story. It was finding the targets was the tricky part. The next thing, this is kind of part of target detection, paying attention. We failed to find intel. So another kind of part of like a sniper match is they told us there's intel along the trail, look out for it, take a photo with your phone, and then prove to us when you get back how many you found. When we first stepped off, I was super vigilant, looking around. I doubt they had any at the beginning, but looking, saw nothing, and then kind of forgot. I think Roy kind of forgot too, because we were just thinking about the stages and trying to figure out how to talk to each other, those first few stages. We finally found one. It was actually a little T.rex, so like that's kind of fun, a little hat tip to us. Took a photo of that. We found 1 of 7. So that was bonus time, I think, taken off our raw time, so we just didn't get a bunch of bonus time. And there were teams that found all 7. We didn't, so that sucks. We just started to focus on the shooting, rucking it, kind of staring at the ground, not staying up, looking at the terrain and the trees and stuff. So again, that's like the kind of thing that once you do it once, now I understand kind of what's required and what's going on. I'll definitely pay more attention next time. So target detection was a big one. The second one was our team communication. So like I mentioned, I think in the Armory video, this was my first time meeting Roy, and this was my first time shooting a match with him and communicating in this kind of format, which I was told later there were a number of guys who were pretty impressed and also surprised that it was my first time even meeting him. Like a lot of these teams that are at matches like this, they've shot multiple matches together. They may be in the same unit together. Like they work together, they go to classes and courses and stuff together. They go to Hat Creek together, whatever. I just showed up. We met, we hung out the night before, and then we got to shooting. That's not typical for matches like this, but sometimes you just got to send it. And it was fun, and I learned a lot from him. So our communication and our talk-ons onto targets needed a lot of work. There was at one point, I have it further down, but there's one point where I was offset from him in the prone. I found his target. He's probably, I want to say like 7 meters away. I gave him a mil measurement for elevation. I said, come 2 mils up, I think is what it was, and 4 mils left. Well, unfortunately, if you're not with the person, your windage, telling him 4 mils left, well, on his side, it's actually probably looks like 8. So, and he kind of said that at the time. I kind of heard it and didn't register. He ended up finding the target ultimately, but later he said, hey, calling out a mill windage for me to find a target, like, doesn't work if you're offset. And then I thought about it and was like, oh, duh. Like, of course, like, elevation works, you know, because we're just kind of shooting in the same plane. But side to side only works if you're, like, right there on him. So didn't make that mistake again. I actually had a stage later where I had the opportunity to do it. And I remember even saying it like, oh, well, I'm not going to tell you a windage because that's not going to work. And I found something else to tell him to get him on the target. But for the most part, that needed a lot of work. A lot of the stages, though, we weren't sure how it was going to be formatted, but it was pretty independent shooter. At least that's how we approached it. The winning team may not have done that, or the teams that beat us. But he had his stuff, I had my stuff. We're both scanning kind of in different lanes even. So there wasn't a whole lot of shared like spotting time. We did it on the long stages, and we did it on the stages where we shared targets. There were a few stages where it was like, shoot this pistol steal, find that target, both shoot it. Next pistol steal, same target. So we're both working towards a common goal, which was fun. But there were a lot of stages where he's got triangles, I've got rectangles. We're just kind of doing our own thing to try to maximize time and get the most points. On the way back, so the first day, we're rucking. I don't know how many miles it was. It was at least a couple, 2 point something. Because I think it ended up being like 3.5 overall. And the second day, we knew it was going to be shorter. You rucked all the stages, shot them, and then rucked all the way back with no pauses for stages. On the way back, I needed to stop a few times. My cardio was not good enough. My legs were fine, but my just respiratory could not handle it. And that cost us like 4 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes. So that sucks. That's 4 to 5 minutes of raw time that we lost in me needing to pause and stop, which Roy was super gracious about. So I need to be on the Echo bike. I've done the Stairmaster a lot. That's actually not, that's helping the legs. It's not as much helping my cardiovascular energy. So more Echo bike, which sucks because I hate that thing. This was a fun one. So because the match, we have a team chasing us from, behind us. He had a countdown clock that would start at 5, work its way down, and it would tell us like 30 seconds left. It was like this little kitchen thing. It looked really funny on his kit, but it makes a lot of sense. I had my Garmin Instinct, and I had a 5-minute countdown timer. Well, his actually, I think, counted up. Mine was going to count down. And I thought, as we were getting to the stage, I'll hit it. I never did. I had too much that I was thinking about. I haven't trained using a watch or a timer in this sort of format, so I never touched my watch at all. I don't think it would have helped a whole lot, but that's something I am going to start repping out a little bit at the range. Just even if it's a 100-meter drill or something that's going to take a little while, I'll give myself 2 minutes, and then on the buzzer or on the indication that I'm arriving into that position, I'll take the moment to hit the watch. I'll start setting up, and I'll glance at it a few times just to get that rep and familiarization into utilizing a clock on a stage to help make decisions and help strategize what needs to happen. Never done that before, so that's something I need to rep out because I totally didn't do it at this match when I thought I might. Now the good news is we were moving pretty fast on day one, that we only got bumped twice. And our last bump, we were on our last target, or I think I was on my last, maybe he had 2 left or 1 left. So it wasn't too bad. I was still looking for my last target, so it's not like I was on it, sending rounds, watching wind. But we did get bumped twice. The guys behind us were definitely, and that was kind of part of the issue with the match is it's like, if they put a really fast team behind you who's really good and super fit and athletic, maybe they're from a certain organization that has a very high standard for that, they could just be chasing you the whole time. And that did happen to a couple teams, but when I talked to the ROs, they knew everyone coming to the match. I think they actually said our team was the one they weren't sure about because they didn't really know me. They knew Roy, but they weren't sure how we were going to do. So they kind of put us in the middle. They put some of the hot shots up towards the front, so they're not just running down some of the less good teams. So they did kind of structure it based off of skill level that they knew of. They put us in the middle on day 1, and then they put us closer to the beginning on day 2, which was fine, perfectly fine. We honestly, they probably could have put us further forward, but we did get bumped twice, and that sucks, but it is what it is. I had a malfunction. This is kind of interesting. So because of some of the stages in the mud, I had a moment where, that should be open, where my mag hit the deck in the mud, probably because I was unloading showing clear before we moved out, and mud got jammed up on the actual round itself. So when I chambered this round, it didn't want to go in. It also didn't want to go out. So, because it was just kind of hung up. And I got a little scared for a second because I was like, well, crap, we're going to have to get the stick out and plunge this sucker, probably on the move. Like, we're probably just going to have to scratch this stage. But then I just took the rifle and I mortared it like I would do with a carbine, and it fell right out. Saw it, was like, oh, that's a lot of mud. So that is something that I wasn't really thinking about, but that night, it was on day one, I wiped all my bullets down. I literally sat there, got all my bullets out that were in magazines that were kind of exposed to the mud, and I wiped all of them down to get rid of all that. Had no problems on the second day, but it's just a fun thing that can happen, and as reliable as bolt guns are, mud got in and did its thing, and so that was super fun. So that was a lot of the bad stuff that happened. There's other things, but the big ones obviously are target detection. I need a lot more practice on that. Team communication, spending more time with Roy or whoever I'm teamed up with. Those are really the make or break sort of principles to a match like this that will allow you to win. Now we'll talk about the things that went well. And the reason that's important, a lot of people don't understand that self-awareness, a lot of people think self-awareness requires that you only talk bad about what you do or failures you've had. The problem with that is it's not actually true self-awareness if you're not able to contrast that about the good that you're doing. So when you are coming away from a match like this, you do need to look for the things you did well on to reinforce the training that you've been doing. So we'll talk about some of the good things because there were some things I was very happy about that have shown me that the training I'm doing at my range, my little old gravel pit in 500 meters, is definitely paying off and it's working. First one is I did not overconfirm on close targets. So this is something that I had trouble with. Some of you called it out on social media. I'd have a target inside of 200 meters and I would still range it, or early on I'd go to my Kestrel and hold down to 200 and be like, oh, it's 0.8, whatever. I've been working on just sending it on targets that are inside of 200 meters. And my theory for this, and I even asked Brian about it early on, he said it would totally work, is playing a video game. If you are a sniper in a video game with a non-variable scope and you have bolt drop in the video game, like you guys will know this, after a while of seeing players at different distances in that reticle, you start to know where to hold. Like instinctually, from experience, he's a little dude far away. I need to hold quite a bit, just based on this reticle and this particular gun I'm using in the game, and boom, you get a headshot. Do this all the time in Battlefield 4. There's no ranging, there's no, I don't know exactly how far it is, but from experience of seeing lots of players at different distances, I know how big and how far away he is and what I need to hold. And my theory has been, with enough experience on a scope on, say, 10 or 12x, which is typically what I'm shooting on, 15-ish, somewhere around there, I should be able to look at a steel target, like a C-zone, and go, that target is like 2 mils big. I've shot this target a lot at this distance. I can hold the head and just send it. And so I've been practicing that a lot at my range, which that is my range. I know how far the targets are. But I had some guys out who were training for Mammoth, and they were doing this. They were over-confirming on close targets. And I was just like, hey, let's do a couple reps of just sending it, watch what happens. And they were like 4 times faster when they just got up there. It's a full man-sized target, like at 300. And I just said, hold the head, like hold a little over the head, just send it. And they're getting hits with their 6 arcs and their 6, I think it was all 6 arcs and maybe a 6.5. So for this match, we had some close targets. The Gophers on the stage with no LRFs, some offhand stuff. I didn't range, couldn't range on the Gopher stage. I just held high what I thought instinctually I should and got hits. So no over-confirming. That was very important. We had a spinner target on one stage. I was not allowed to engage any other targets until the spinner was spun. Actually, neither shooter could. So we shot all the pistol. We decided I would engage the spinner because I have a more powerful gun. I heard someone mention like 3 rounds can spin it. So I was like, okay, I've never shot a spinner with a precision gun with this caliber at this distance. I think it was at 400 meters because my hold was a 2.2, I think is what it was. I dialed because that is a smaller target and cleaned it in 3 rounds. I gave it a little smidge of time of flight because I figured as the swinger is swinging into the position, I should try to time that a little bit. So I gave it like 0.3 seconds, 0.2 seconds before it was, fully down in the downward position. And it spun in 3 rounds, which is, I believe, the minimum for 6.5. So super happy about that, big confidence builder. My position was decent on a log with my bag, and I was in a kneeling position, and then immediately dialed to 0 and started ranging. Which brings me to, with all the practice I've done on the range, a common mistake that can occur if you have an LRF, and I made this at Hat Creek, and that's when I was like, you gotta make every mistake once to know what's going on. I would dial for targets really far, so like, 5.8 or whatever. After engaging that target, I would leave it on 5.8 range, but I've changed the 0 on my scope that this is not aligning anymore. It is not going to give me a proper ballistic solution. You have to go back to 0, so it all lines up again, range, and then dial again. So I only dialed on small targets and the far target, the ELR target, in the match, but I always came back to 0 before I ranged again. I never caught myself ranging, being like, that seems weird, and then looking at my turret and going, oh, I'm still dialed for 6. It never happened because I've repped that so much at my range, even on close targets. It's just the rep of double checking, triple checking, and doing all of that. So that was a pretty big win. Used magnification well. I shot a lot on like 15x, 12, somewhere around there. Dialed up when I needed to identify, and then I would bring it back to shoot. Also brought it back even more to see the entire lane, just to detect a little bit better. And I messed with my parallax a lot more. In the PRS match, that was an observation I had that I wrote down on my post after my PRS match. I never touched my parallax, which for that match was probably okay, but we were shooting around a lot of shrubbery and stuff that we were actually shooting through trees and stuff as well, that the parallax and setting it to the target out there so you can get through the shrubs starts to matter quite a bit more. Like I mentioned in the armory video, so I have an electronic level on the side of the gun. Again, with my training at my range, even at 100 meters, you don't have to do this really far. I've been trying to be very disciplined at checking my level before firing, even at 100 meters where it's not really going to matter. In this match, I remember seeing green like 90% of the time. Green means the gun is level, it's ready to fire. I don't believe I took any shots like super cattywampus. I took very good care of that, and that's from training on the flat range, at my range, just being very purposeful at this sucker's always on, and I'm always getting reps of seeing that green before I fire. Definitely paid off. Didn't make any mistakes with the Tremor 3. That was good. I've done that once at Hat Creek. It was fun. I didn't know it was the mistake I was making until months later, but Brian was calling for me holds in my scope. I was going off the number on the top, which is miles an hour for like a mover, like a person. Mils are on the bottom, and they're completely different. And I was not hitting the target. Brian was kind of flabbergasted why the calls weren't working. It was like at 1,100 meters. And it wasn't until later that I was like, oh, I used the wrong numbers. He was saying 4. I was using 4 mile an hour, not 4 mils. So in this match, when we got to the ELR stage, Roy started calling out mils for the windage, which is 4, 4.5. And I remember looking through my scope going, not the top number. I need to come down to the bottom, and was good to go. I only made 2 hits on that stage because the wind kept changing. It was like from 3.5 mils to 5 on that stage. I made 1 hit on my own while he did his stuff, and 1 hit with him spotting. And that's all I was able to collect on that particular stage at 1,089 meters. I think the next target was 1,200. There were 2 little tricks that I snuck in that I heard from other people. One was on the first stage, I wasn't sure what lane we were supposed to shoot in. So as I sat there collecting my thoughts, I just turned around, looked at my RO. She couldn't tell that I was looking, but she was on binos. And then I looked over and was like, oh, it is those. Like, they seemed too far, but I was like, it's those over there. The second one was when we arrived into one position, I immediately looked for brass, mainly in the corner. I wanted to see if people were going to the corner to shoot. There was a bunch of brass to the right of that corner, so I went straight to there. That ended up paying off on that stage. So those were two little things that I learned from other people. The only time I used them, but they definitely helped. There's lots of little tricks like that in this sort of competitive environment that I find really fascinating and fun. They're very cunning and witty that you don't really get in USPSA. You get it in something like this. So that was super fun. Equipment usage was good. I had no issues with equipment. I had no issues with my rig, binos, tripod, gun, besides the muddy bullet. Everything worked out, which I was happy about. Didn't have any hang-ups on equipment. All the hang-ups for performance were just on me with communicating with Roy or with target detection and finding targets. The equipment didn't hold me back, and I was super happy about that. The other thing that was great is I did visual checks of my position as I would arrive. So this bipod, highly recommend, but very expensive, has a lot of freedom of movement for angle. Depending on how you want to run it, you can even bring the legs out. So what I would do before I would assume my prone position, because you want to shoot in prone as much as you can, and I only had to shoot off the tripod twice. I would look at where the targets would be. I started doing this like 3 stages in. No, actually I did it on the second stage. It was a downward slope. But I'd look at the position. I would look roughly to where the targets are. I would look to where my body would be, and then I would immediately mess with my bipod before going to the deck. And it worked every time. Even on the last stage on day 1, we had a pretty, I think it was a high angle shot technically. Like it was pretty decent. But I saw it and I literally went, well, I'm going to put them all the way as close as possible because I've got to really crank the gun up in there to shoot those targets. It's a little more wobbly because they're closer together, but it allowed me to engage both targets up top at like 800 and something meters. So I didn't have to come back forward and adjust a whole lot. It was kind of set, which was really good. I was happy about that. Good equipment use, and it's a good product. It let me do the things. Overall, I was pretty happy with my recoil management. I shot in the prone a lot with a bag, and this is only a 6.5, and I have a little small suppressor on it. Like the gun doesn't move a whole lot, but when you are zoomed in a little bit, you're trying to spot impacts, trace, and wind, especially on close targets, but it's not as much time of flight. Recoil management is a huge deal at spotting your impacts so you can make a fast follow-up. I was really happy with my recoil management. I mean, that's the thing I've repped quite a lot at the range, that I was able to spot basically everything and even spot my own wind when Roy was doing his stuff. I wasn't having to rely on a spotter. The only stage where that became more necessary really was the ELR. But once I started to see kind of what was happening down there, I spotted for myself. And that was at 1100. He went to do his thing. I was able to get another hit. And that was super cool because I feel like with a good scope like this Night Force, if I'm in a good position, my gun doesn't recoil a lot. I mean, another set of eyes doesn't hurt, especially if they're able to call wind better than me. But I should be able to spot my work and adjust from there. And I was able to do that some, so I was really happy about that. We didn't stay on stages too long. Like I mentioned, he had his timer, so we were communicating about that. Hey, it's been 5 minutes. Hey, let's take another 60 seconds to try to find this last target, and then off we would go. We didn't stay on stages super long, battling like one target. I guess there was one stage where we did that. There was a lot of wind, and Roy was trying to engage this steel, and it was also in all the shrubbery, so we couldn't see splash. He went to dirt spots a couple of times so we could try to dial him in. And then we got bumped on that stage on day 2. And I wasn't allowed to shoot till he hit the target. So I was sitting on it, waiting. And then it ended up being the wrong target anyway. The target we were supposed to shoot before was very hard to find, and a lot of teams missed it. We had the opportunity to bump teams a couple times, like I mentioned. That's kind of fun. That either means we're doing really well or that team is going slow, so it's kind of hard to know. And then the other one was, Roy mentioned the importance the day before in a text of working from opposing angles on these types of matches where you have to find all the targets, which made sense. Like he's over here, he could see past these trees, but then I'm here, I could see past these. So I did that on a few stages. He went to set up and I immediately went to the other side. That was good until I made mistakes calling windage mills for where a target is. And it's not great for calling hits. So on a couple stages, when I was done with my targets, I would grab a tripod and my binos, move to him, and kind of follow him around, trying to stay behind him and spotting. But the opposing angles did allow us to find different targets, and I believe find different targets faster. So you don't always want to stay together, is what I learned from that, and that worked pretty well. So with all that said, the question is, well, how'd you guys place? Where's your practice score? Well, this match was scored a little differently. I don't believe this is on practice score. They kind of did their own thing, but I do have a photo that Roy took after I left. I had to leave early, and we placed 11th out of 33. Now, I've redacted all the names on here because a lot of guys are active special operations sniper team people, and I'm just trying to be respectful of who doesn't want their name on a big or popular small YouTube video. So I'm just redacting everyone. People in the sniper community know who was at this match. They know who won. They know who placed where. But we placed 11th. I'm happy about that because we showed up having never worked together, never met at all. My first match, and we beat some folks who were pretty good. And that's what Roy messaged me about later. And I was pretty happy about that because what it shows is the flat range work I've been doing for the last year or so, I'd say at least year, is paying off on just the gun manipulation, gun work, the equipment usage. My tripod stuff could be better. The things I lack in right now is spotting, making good calls, good communication, specifics to matches, like little rules and mechanics I've just never seen before, and target detection. Those are things I can't train at my range super well. There's some target detection we will start doing. It's going to require using more people to set stuff up so we don't know where stuff is, and then we have to find the items and call them out, stuff like that. There are some things we can do, and we will, because I want to show that to you guys so that maybe you could do that on your own. You don't even need guns for that. You just need spotters with like mills or binos with mills so that you can help talk on. But for the most part, all of this has paid off. And again, big thanks to Brian Morgan and my friend Matt for teaching me this stuff. And part of the reason for this, like I've spent a lot of time on this and even going to this match, is to help ensure that the content that we are producing or that I'm producing along these lines is the best content possible. When I look back at the SCAR 17 video I did a few years ago, the Arrow 5000 test, any of the like DMR guns from a few years ago, I'm like, I did not know what I was doing. The content was okay or good, but it wasn't great. And my goal with all of this is to continually increase the quality and the educational material of our videos. Even if it means spending a lot of money traveling around learning this stuff, buying equipment that is highly expensive, if it means we can have more educational content that's better for people to watch, that is our goal here at T.REX Arms. Brandon's going and doing stuff, Brantley's doing stuff, I'm doing stuff so that our content can get better every year. That's a big deal to me, and it's a big deal to them as well. And I hope it will show in content that we produce moving forward, where if you watch that and then you go back 3 years, you're like, ooh, this is pretty cringe. And yeah, a lot of our content is pretty cringe from the old days because that was the information I was working with. I didn't know a lot. I had different standards for what videos I wanted to make, but this is the stuff I'm more interested in now. It is a little more boring. It's definitely more educational, but I believe it's the content that people need, and it's the content that's going to get people to the next level. So if you've watched the Armory video on the equipment and some of the thought process for some of that, and you've sat through this video, which is quite long, the thing to take away is probably, wow, there's a lot of detail that goes into a match like this beyond your normal USPSA match or even a 3-gun match. And the analogy I'm going to give for this compared to some of these other matches is a USPSA match is like a sweaty Call of Duty ranked lobby. Everyone's running around as fast as possible, doing incredibly sweaty things to try to win like 0.2 seconds off of their competition, score 5 points. All the pros are shooting it in the same time, the same way for the most part. It's just seeing who can do it the fastest. It's like some crazy like race car driving. But then you have sniper matches like this, and I see these more as like a competitive RTS game. There's a lot more room for creative like problem solving to gain the upper hand on another competitor. There's obviously a lot of skills involved, but the pace and the tempo is very different. And as I'm developing my process, because this is something I'm kind of thinking through as I look back at the match, I don't have a great process as I arrive into a stage of what to do when. And the way I'm kind of looking at it right now is it's kind of like a build order in an RTS game. So in a real-time strategy game, for those of you that maybe aren't aware, like Command & Conquer, Warcraft, I'm playing Warcraft 3 a lot right now, is there are specific actions that you take at the start of the game to have the most efficient base at producing units so you can crush the enemy. And you're doing all these timed little things, and you have a process that you stick to for maximum efficiency. And I've just based on what I've experienced, a lot of this is very similar. You arrive into a stage, maybe you hit your watch, you look for targets, you listen to the RO for what new conditions you have to work with, you check on your partner, you start getting in the position, you disconnect your equipment, you take it off. Like, there's a very specific process that I started to notice as I shot many stages into this, and as I do this more, I should get better at. But if you're a new competitor going into this, this is some stuff I did not know ahead of time that I would have liked to know, maybe to start wrapping my mind around. But this is very process oriented, and I'm going to start adding some of this process to my training on my range, on a regular range, not in a match, but just like some of this process, so that I'm used to it, so I won't forget to do it, I won't take it for granted. It's the same as me checking my turret to make sure I'm on 0. It's the same as me making sure my lens cover on my Mars isn't on, or that my bag isn't still on my belt once I'm in the position, like it's already under the buttstock of the rifle. There's just little things like that, and that's what I enjoy about this shooting discipline, is it is much more detail-oriented. It is much more cerebral and intellectual. I still enjoy USPSA with being the twitchy shooter person that I am, but I'm really enjoying this aspect of competition because it's just very different. It's a very different format. If you're interested in matches like this, like I said at the beginning, there's not a lot of them. They are kind of hard to find. Some of them are invite only. Some of them are military only. But there are some out there. I recommend going to Sniper's Hide or Googling around. You can probably find where some of these matches are at. NRL Hunter is another type of match. I'm going to try to shoot one this year where you don't know where the targets are. It's, I think you carry all your equipment to each stage, but it's squatting, so you're not like rucking the whole thing for time. But you're in a position where you can't see where the targets are at, and then you're given 5 minutes or whatever to go up, find them, and shoot them. It's like animal-based. I know of a lot of mill guys who go and do that because they like the practical nature of that style of match over PRS. So NRL Hunter, there's a bunch of those matches out west. There's some here out east. Definitely look that up if you want to get into this. And you probably don't need as much equipment. Some of them are team-based, some of them aren't. Definitely check out the NRL Hunter match and series. And hopefully, if this format of match style gains in popularity, we will see more of them available. So there's more places you guys can go to take out your range-finding binos, your cool bolt gun or gas gun, your spotter. You can take a buddy and you can go out there and have fun, but also see how you do and how you stack up against guys who do this professionally. Thanks so much for watching. I'm looking forward to my next match. And if you've sat through this whole video, I respect that.